This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So today is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, look, I'm getting ready to teach another session of my online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And I wanted to come on and just talk for a few minutes about some of the content and some of what we'll talk and ask us. We wanted to get into some of the history of the Moors in Spain, in Europe, generally speaking, but especially in Spain. Okay, so this is a this time around it's going to be at least 12 weeks. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can watch it anytime. So we teach the class on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Run a little behind schedule today. So we're going to start right around 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. The information's in the thread of the broadcast. So you can register for this multi-week online course. Okay. All right. So we do it thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Now, we know that the United States was called Egypt of the West by many of the founding fathers. And when we look at Freemasonry, we see that the foundation of Freemasonry are the teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, the Nile Valley region of Africa. And these teachings are going to be taken into Europe. And it's going to be these teachings that bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. So in today's class, one of the things we'll talk about is the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, which is basically 476 AD to going into the 13th century. Okay, going into the 14th century, the 1300s, and then the next period after that is going to be the Renaissance era. And the Renaissance era is going to be an era of enlightenment, okay? And Europe is coming out of the Dark Ages, and they start to conquer other people's lands. Now, there's a good piece from face-to-faceafrica.com that deals with Cleopatra's Needle, and it deals with three tekens that, or what the Greeks call obelisks, tekenu, or what the Greeks call obelisks, which comes from the mythology of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And you have these tekenu in London, England. You have them in New York City, okay, and also in Paris, France. And these were actually taken from Africa, okay? So we have symbols of Africa all around us, and we have to become history detectives to understand how to decode these symbols. Now, ancient Egyptians called obelisks tekenu, and they were also used to tell time in the past. Their pinnacles were basically covered in gold to reflect the sunlight. Historians say the obelisks represented immortality and eternity, and their long structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. The long structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. Okay, so now currently Cleopatra's Needle is the name given to three ancient Kemetic or ancient Egyptian tekenu, or what the Greeks called obelisks. One in New York City, one in London, England, and one in Paris, France. However, they do not all come from one Egyptian site. They do not all come from one Egyptian site. Okay. Now you should be able to see the screen clearly. Let me know how we're coming in, and I want to make sure everybody can hear me as well. Okay. All right. So the obelisks in New York City and London, England are carved out of red granite from the quarries of Aswan, and a major source of stone for Egyptian antiquities. The two obelisks were commissioned. The two obelisks were commissioned by Nasubiti, or Pharaoh Thutmose III, for the Temple of the Sun of Heliopolis, near modern-day Cairo, with each weighing about 224 tons, and they stand 68 feet tall. Okay, now there's a good article from face-to-faceafrica.com called Cleopatra's Needle: How Three Ancient Egyptian Obelisks Ended Up in New York City, London, England, and Paris, France. And what happens is we'll see these structures, okay? We'll see structures like Washington. Okay, people go on tour of Washington, D.C., and they look at the layout of Washington, D.C., and think the founding fathers were so great and things like this. But they don't understand that the inspiration for a lot of what we see is coming out of ancient Kemet, coming out of the Nile Valley region of Africa, coming out of ancient Africa. There are about 1,200 Tekenu all throughout ancient Kemet. Today, they're less than 12. Okay, but since we don't understand who we are, since we don't understand history, okay, people can steal our history, steal our symbols, represent them to the world like they invented the symbols themselves. And we'll look at them as being so great and look down upon ourselves, refer to ourselves in dehumanizing terms, call ourselves N-word and V's and things like this, and don't understand that all this comes from us. Okay, and many Europeans know this. Now, here's a famous statue of Asar, Aset, and Heru, the first Holy Trinity, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. When we read about Heru being born on December 25th of a virgin birth, we see the retelling of this very ancient story over and over and over again, adapted to various people's cultures over thousands of years, with different people's ethnicities represented in the story. If you follow Dr. Ray Hagins and watch some of his videos on our YouTube channel, and Dr. Ray Hagins is one of my teachers, as well as Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor Kabahai Wathakamane and Professor James Small and Dr. Claude Anderson. But Dr. Ray Hagins has been teaching about this for years in the African village. Okay, now there were approximately 1,200 Tekenu built in ancient Kemet in ancient times, but only about a dozen are found in Egypt today. Many of the Tekenu, okay, removed from ancient Kemet, are now in Istanbul, Turkey, London, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, New York, New York, Rome, Italy, Vatican City, and elsewhere throughout the world. The Tekenu are now called obelisks by their new owners, and few people know their origin, or that they symbolize the resurrection of the African king Asar, Now, if you read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, and this is one of the books that we use in the online course. Now, you don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in the class. We show you excerpts of the book on the screen, usually. And Browder is brilliant in this history. Browder does a tour of Washington, D.C. called Egypt on the Potomac. So he has the book called Egypt on the Potomac, okay? But he actually does a tour of Washington, D.C., and he takes people around Washington, D.C., and shows them how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of the layout of ancient Egypt. And he shows them the symbolism coming straight from Africa, coming straight from ancient Africa, that we see in Washington, D.C. today, that we associate with Europeans. Okay, and we associate with the founding fathers and George Washington, and they were so great and they were so brilliant, even though many of them were slave owners. But they were heavily influenced by ancient Africa. Okay, now many of us have been taught to hate Africa, have been taught to hate Egypt, and we've been taught to run away from it, while oppressors and colonizers run to it, because they understand that's the source of knowledge, that's the source of power. Okay, now, if we go to the next slide here, let's see, let's skip over this. And then when we look at Freemasonry, okay, directly connected to the Moors, because the teachings that the Moors taken to Europe are going to form the foundation of Freemasonry. Now, the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun, And Mason means child of light, and expresses a desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light, or sons and daughters of light, was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet, okay, the Per-Ankh, the house of life, which is what they call their temples of learning, the Per-Ankh, the house of life. Now, many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of ancient Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. Okay, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of going to, number one, going to a liberal arts college, that concept of going to a liberal arts college comes from the teachings in the temples, in the grand lodges, in the per ankhs, the house of life. And then also when you read Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James, and he talks about the trivium and the quadrivium. He talks about the seven liberal arts. He talks about the arithmetic and the rhetoric and the logic and things like this, right? The concept of liberal arts colleges comes from ancient Kemet. Okay, it comes from ancient Africa. This is coming from my ancestors. Okay, so we've gotten so far from who we are. We've allowed other people to define reality for us. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So much so where you have some of our people who think that college is not for them, when we were the ones who created the concept of high institutions of higher learning, and we were the ones who created the first institutions of higher learning, and people came from around the world to attend those institutions of higher learning, whether it's in ancient Kemet, whether it's the University of Sankore in the city of Timbuktu and the Songhai and Mali empires, whether it's the University of Janneh. We were the ones. And then when we go and we look at the Moors, in the University of Salamanca in Spain is built by Moors and Arabs right around 1285 AD. Okay, and when we look at a lot of the oldest universities in Europe, University of Toledo and Barcelona, things like this, many of the first instructors at those universities were African Moors. Okay, but we don't understand our history. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So check out pages 18 and 32 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. Now, Masonic temples are considered houses of light or temples of learning, houses of light or temples of learning. The term Mason or child of light is a direct reference to the highest degree of the ancient Kemetic education system. The 33 degrees of instruction within Freemasonry represent a fraction of the 360 degrees of instruction that comprise the ancient Kemetic mystery system or ancient Kemetic system of education. Yet with less than 10%, of the wisdom of ancient Kemet, Freemasons have held positions of influence and power throughout the world for over 200 years. This is page 33 of Egypt on the Potomac. Okay, so the concept of going to an institution of higher learning and getting your credentials in a series of degrees, okay, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, graduate's degree, things like this. That concept comes from the houses of life, the per ankh. That comes from ancient Kemet. Many of us have gotten so far away from who we are. Okay, and what you do and what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay, so when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. What information did they have from ancient Kemet taken into Europe by the Africans known as the Moors? And 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution were Freemasons. 4 of the first 5 U.S. presidents were Freemasons, and so far 14 Freemasons have been U.S. presidents as well. Okay, now, so we go through and we look at different aspects of history, and then we definitely look at some of the history of the Moors in Spain. Okay, and we know the Moors with the Granada War, January 2nd, 1492, which ends January 2nd, 1492. Basically, we know that the Moors lose control of their last stronghold, which is in southern Spain, Granada. Okay, January 2nd, 1492. Now, this is directly connected to Christopher Columbus, because Christopher Columbus set sail August 3rd, 1492, on the Nina de Pinta and the Santa Maria, the day before Columbus sails, Spain expels the Sephardim, the Sephardic Jews, on August 2nd, 1492. All this takes place in 1492. Okay, and all this history is connected. Okay, so we go through and we look at some of the history of the Moors, and this is some of what we'll teach in class today, because I'm only here for a few minutes. I have to jump out of here and teach today's class. You can register for the course. It's a 10-week online course that I teach: Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have the link posted here on the thread of the broadcast. Also, you can visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, and we have the information there. The class is on sale, $60, regularly $130. We're actually going to do about either 12 or 13 sessions this time around. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Normally we do it on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., but my work schedule is changed, keeps changing. So we're running a little behind today, okay, but we're still going to do it today. And on Tuesdays, the class that I teach, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We start in the year 1800, look at history chronologically, year by year, from 1800 through 1968. Civil War, Reconstruction era, Great Migration, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power movement, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended. What were the laws and policies put in place to bring us to where we are today, to better understand where we need to go from here. Okay, and we have both classes in the bundle pack. You get a limited time only. You can get both classes for $100. That's over $260 value. Just click right here for register here. You can use debit card or credit card, okay, or PayPal. All right, now, if we look at, so you can register for the class right now. Join us in class. We do the session live. All the sessions are archived and recorded, so you can go back and watch it anytime also. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. You'll have access to it. Okay, so we look at some of the history of the Moors and going into Spain. They first go on in 710 AD for the reconnaissance mission, okay, by Tarif. And then they go on in 711 AD, led by General Tariq ibn Ziyad. All right, and when we look at Spain now, in the 8th century, it was called the Iberian Peninsula. Today we know it as Spain and Portugal. You see Spain and Portugal right next to each other, and they're right above Morocco. So they're going right in from Morocco, a very short distance into Spain, and they fight against the Vandals and the Visigoths. Okay, and we know in 476 AD it's going to be the Vandals and the Visigoths that crush the western portion of the Roman Empire and send Europe into what's known as the Dark Ages, and this is who the Moors are going to fight against in 711 AD. Now, who were the Moors? The Moors' ancestors were known as the Garamantes. These were a Black African people living throughout North Africa. Hannibal Barca, who we talked about last class, Hannibal Barca, and we talked about the Battle of Kemet, 216 BC, and Hannibal crossing the Alps, 219 BC. We talked about the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, where Publius Cornelius Scipio defeats Hannibal Barca. And then after that defeat, Publius Cornelius Scipio takes the surname Africanus after he defeats Hannibal Barca at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. Okay, so when you register for the course, you can watch last week's class where we dealt with Hannibal and the Carthaginians and the Punic Wars. Now, the Moors, according to George G.M. James in the book Stolen Legacy, were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. These teachings will bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Unfortunately, everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. It was to our detriment. It wasn't to our benefit. It was all to our detriment. Now, this is not a racist statement or a hateful statement, anything like that. It's factual. Everything we taught them. The Moors introduced cotton and sugar into Europe. Okay, they're going to introduce, they call alchemy, which today we call chemistry. They introduced the periodic tables, they introduced different types of food and store systems, systems for storing food, different types of agricultural techniques, all different types of things like this. And everything we taught Europeans came to kick us in the behind. They're going to introduce a long stick called a fire stick that uses gunpowder and fires one projectile. Europeans in the mid 14th century are going to produce the first firearm from that. And from that is downhill, because if you study the transatlantic slave trade, what gave Europeans such an advantage was that they had the gun, they had firearms, they had the cannon, and they had the Bible. They had the gun, the cannon. The cannon was one of the most destructive weapons. Okay, they had the gun, the cannon, and the Bible. All right. All three destructive weapons. Now, this is not anti-Christian. This is not against the Bible. It's against the misusage of the Bible. We have to understand the difference. A gun in the right hand can save your life. In the wrong hand, it can take your life. This is not against the Bible. It's against the misusage of the Bible and Christianity. Okay. All right. So, the word Moor is derived from the Greek word maros, M-A-U-R-O-S, which literally means black or a very dark color. Now, the Romans adopt this word and call them Mari, M-A-U-R-I, Mari. The Mari were a group of, the Mari were a Northwest African people who were very dark-skinned, Northwest African people who were very dark-skinned. The Romans will refer to the region of Northwest Africa as Mauritania. Okay. Mauritania is a Latin word and means the land of the black-skinned people. We see the prefix Mari, M-A-U-R-I, or you may see it spelled at one point maybe M-A-U-R-E, but basically the same thing. Mauritania is Latin and means the land of the black-skinned people. You will also see or hear the term Moorish, M-A-U-R-I-S-H. Now, the Romans later adopt the word as a reference for the black-skinned inhabitants they encounter in Africa. Read Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivor Van Sertima, pages 527 and 187, because this is one of the books that we use in the class. Now, you don't have to buy any of these books. Okay, just so you understand, but we use them as reference to document what we're talking about. Now, when we look at Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., a lot of people read this book in high school, Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. Well, check this out. He talks about the Moors in the book. Page 40 of the 6th edition, page 40 of the 6th edition, chapter 2, in the chapter called Africa's Past, I think the chapter is called. What's the name of that chapter? It's page 40 begins before. Oh, okay. Chapter 2 is called Before the Mayflower. The first chapter is called The African Past. Okay. So on page 40, Lerone Bennett Jr. is talking about in the 17th century, the 1600s, in the land that we call the United States, specifically in the territory that becomes the 13 colonies. Okay. And he's talking about the fact that in this time, at the time, like 1619 that we keep hearing about, August 20th, 1619, when the White Lion pirate ship comes into Virginia, it comes actually into Hampton, Virginia. He's talking about the fact that at this point in time, well, number one, you don't have codified slave laws, because codified slave laws don't come into existence until 1641 in Massachusetts. So those 20 and odd Africans that we keep hearing about, reading about in the project, those 20 and odd Africans are put into a form of indentured servitude, and they were because what we know is chattel slavery. Even codified slave laws don't exist in any of the 13 colonies at this time. They come to Connecticut in about 1650, Virginia about 1660, 1661. But the term white, generally speaking, is not being used in the early 1600s for what we call white people. The term is being used is English or Christians, okay? And the term, generally speaking, negro or Negro in the 13 British colonies is not being used as well. Okay, so what he says is of all the improbable aspects of this situation, the oddest to modern blacks and whites is that white people did not seem to know that they were white. Now, you know what? Let me see. I have a better I have a hold on. Let me pull this up because I scanned this page, so we have a better version of this because it's hard to see it on the slide. Let's see. Let's pull this up. Pull this up from before the Mayflower right here because I have an EF format. Okay, I just want to out this class. So you all can register for the class right now or soon as I'm done with this. This is just a sample of the type of information that you'll get in the class. And I do a PowerPoint, references, articles, or clips. The class is very thoroughly documented. There's probably 60, 70 articles that we cover. I created the curriculum. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017. Okay, so this is page 40. You should be able to see this much better. This is page 40 before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. Okay, now what he says is, let's scroll down here. This is the sixth edition of all of the improbable aspects of this situation. The oddest to modern blacks and whites is that white people did not seem to know that they were white. White people did not seem to know that they were white. It appears from surviving evidence that the first colonist had no concept of themselves as white people. Okay, he's talking about in the early 1600s and what would become the British colony, the 13 British colonies. The legal documents identified whites as Englishmen and or Christians. The word white, with its burden of arrogance and biological pride, developed late in the century. Okay, developed late in the 17th century, basically after Bacon's rebellion of 1675 and 1676 in the colony of Virginia. It's going to be about 1781 that in Virginia they introduced the term white to break up the alliance between enslaved Africans, free Africans, African indentured servants, and white indentured servants, and poor whites, because there was an alliance against them, and they united. All of these groups united in Bacon's rebellion against the ruling elite who were exploiting these people's labor on the tobacco plantations in the colony of Virginia, because they realized that they had a common enemy. So they united, and actually during Bacon's rebellion, they're going to burn down Jamestown, Virginia. Okay, this is in 1676. All right, now the word white, with this burden of arrogance and biological pride, developed late in the century as a direct result of slavery and organized debasement of blacks or African people. The same point can be made from the other side of the line. For a long time in colonial America, there was no legal name to focus white anxiety. The first blacks were called blackamoors, Moors, Negers, Negers, or Nagars, Negars. Okay, so what he's saying is that African people in the British colonies were called Moors or blackamoors. They largely weren't called Negroes, largely were called blacks. Okay. And then when you read the Virginia slave codes of 1705, and they have a encyclopedia of Virginia.org, you read the Virginia slave codes of 1705. The Section 4 of the Virginia Slave Codes make a distinction between Negroes and Moors and the treatment of Negroes and Moors. Okay, that's the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705, and it's that Encyclopedia of Virginia. I did a whole presentation on this recently. I was speaking at a environmental conference. But if we look at Encyclopedia of Virginia, where is that? It's at encyclopedia of Virginia.org. Let's see. Okay, yeah, an act of concerning this right here. Primary documents. Okay. I'll show you that in just a second here. Then I have to get out here and teach this class. Okay, let's look at this here. Okay, the word negro or negro, a Spanish and Portuguese term for black, did not come into general use in Virginia until the later part of the century. That's the later part of the 1700s. That's after 1681. This is when you're going to have 1681. Basically, you're going to have the term white introduced in the colony of Virginia, and then it's going to be adopted by the other colonies. And then the word negro is going to be introduced as well, largely being used right around that same time. And what they're trying to do is break up the alliance between poor whites and white indentured servants and enslaved Africans, free African people, and African slaves. They're trying to break up that alliance. So they break up that alliance by the distinctions, by the names they use for those groups of people, and then the names that they use for those groups of people. That helps to determine how those groups of people are treated, the status that they have, the types of privileges that they have, etc. Okay, so this is what Lerone Bennett Jr. is explaining. Now, if we look at very quickly here, if we look at the Encyclopedia Virginia, encyclopediavirginia.org, okay, primary document, an act concerning servants and slaves, 1705. This deals with the Virginia slave codes of 1705, okay. Okay, we scroll down here. They have some of the original documents. In an act concerning servants and slaves passed by the General Assembly in the session of October 1705, Virginia's colonial government collects old and establishes new laws with regards to indentured servants and slaves. So if we skip over, you can read the rest of this. I don't have time to get through all of it. I want to go to section 4. Section 4, Roman numeral 4. Okay. It says, and also be enacted by the authority aforesaid, and it is hereby enacted that all servants imported and brought into this country by sea or land who were not Christians in their native country, except Turks and Moors, in amity with Her Majesty, and others that can make due proof of their being free in England or any other Christian country before they, before they were shipped in order to transportation hither, shall be accounted and be slaves, shall be accounted and be slaves. So it's what it's saying is that Moors are exempt from the Virginia slave codes of 1705. And they're making a distinction between the classification of Moors and the classification of Negroes, okay? Because the Negroes are the ones who are going to be enslaved, shall be accounted and be slaves, and such be here bought and sold, notwithstanding a conversion to Christianity afterward, okay? You can go back and read the whole thing, but this is now what happens is the Virginia slave codes, versions of this, get adopted by the other 13 colonies, okay? And this helps to form what we call race in this country, and it deals with racism, Okay, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival on a planet that's less than 10% European. All right, now, so we go throughout history and we look at we look at thousands of years of history, but the section Moors, we look at General Tariq ibn Ziyad and the Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula, 711 AD, and where the Moors and that rock promontory is called Jebel Tariq. Jebel Tariq, okay, today, or is translated as Tariq's Mountain, okay. Today we call it the Rock of Gibraltar, okay. Jebel Tariq, Tariq's Mountain, or Gibraltar, or the Rock of Gibraltar, is named after an African Moor, General Tariq ibn Ziyad. Okay, so all this relates to African history. All this relates to our history, relates to who we are. Okay, we deal with things like, why do you have Moors' heads on the national flags of Corsica and Sardinia? Corsica is a French island in the Mediterranean, and Sardinia is a Italian island in the Mediterranean. And the Moors were in those areas, okay? And it took a monumental effort to defeat them. So you have African Moors heads on the national flags right now in Corsica and Sardinia. And a lot of people don't know that these African people don't know why those Moors heads are there, anything like that. Okay, so all this relates to our history. And the people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems in the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. And we also have to deal with things like Christopher Columbus, and Columbus helps to greatly spread the transatlantic slave trade. Columbus operated on behalf of the Spanish crown, and then we look at where Columbus goes on his 4 voyages, and he conquers, the Bahamas and Hispaniola, the western third of the island of Hispaniola. Hispaniola is where we have Haiti. He conquers Cuba and Jamaica and Puerto Rico, Panama, Honduras, etc. And these nations that he conquers, these island nations in Central America, etc., and the Caribbean, they have never recovered from what happened to them over 500 years ago. All right. And this is going to lead to things like the Asiento de Negros of 1518 and King Charles V, the Asiento, which greatly expands the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so this is just a sample of the type of information we deal with in this 10-week online course. Actually, this time around, we're going to do 12 weeks because some of them I had to break up into 1-hour sessions. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Okay, right. We have the information around the homepage. You'll see the information for my radio show, and then you scroll down, and we have my 15 lecture download bundle pack. 15 of my lectures is on sale, $50, regularly $150, makes a great gift. But we have the online class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We usually do it Wednesday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm running behind schedule today. We're about to teach this class. It's on sale, $60, regularly $130. You can watch classes on demand. You can join us live in class, and all the sessions are recorded after we do them. So you can go back and watch it anytime. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. Okay, I'm going to post a link here. Once again, we have it in the thread of the broadcast. So you can register right now, join us in class. You can use this information with your children as well. I would say the information is PG-13. It's not overly graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing, anything like that. So you can use this information with your children, use it with your families, etc., and get the bundle pack, because the bundle pack for $100 is a huge value, because it's like a $260 value. Normally courses $130 each. You get 2 for $100. You can watch from around the world, and the content will blow you away. Okay, this is the binder. Actually have put all the content in the binder. So I have a binder that I teach from. where we have the curriculum, we have the articles, all of that, and then there's like 7 books that we use in the class as well. Okay. Also, if you want to support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. And we have the information on the homepage of our website right here. Also, and if you click on the Cash App link, it takes you to our QR code for Cash App as well. Okay. All right. Look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent. If you like this type of information, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. If you like this type of information, did you learn anything from this? If you learned from this, if I talked about 2, 3, 4, 5 things you did not know, when you register for the class, it's totally going to blow your mind. It'll totally change the way that you look at history. Okay. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.